So welcome to the Youth Rise Up Against Climate Change, an interactive conversation across 2 continents. My name is Elsa Vie at the Boston University's African Studies Center, and I will be only the technical support for this session. I want to share that there is a resource list that accompanies this session that I will share right here, and much of what right here, I'm just linking it right here. Much of what we have, we're going to talk about today is featured in this resource list. So in this day and age of rising waters, unleashed storms, climate migration, coupled with the withdrawal of key climate protection agreements, this session is so crucial for so many reasons. Most importantly, it brings the voice of the dedicated, active, caring, and expert young people who are leaders in the fight for climate change. I'm so pleased to introduce our wonderful moderator who will lead our session tonight. Anaya Butler is a 14-year-old freshman from Oakland, California. From the time we've met to organize this workshop, she has so deeply impressed me with her organization, her clarity of mind about the purpose of this work and the intersectional part of this work, and her comprehensive vision for a socially just world. She is an activist, an organizer, a poet, a published author with the Bay Area Youth versus Apocalypse, which is in your resource list, which I just linked. Her goal is to fight for climate and social justice by uplifting the voices of youth and Black and Brown communities through poetry. So without further ado, I'm going to turn to you, Anaya. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for introducing me. I hope you guys are all doing well. The goal for this panel today is to kind of help you guys, the audience, hear the voices of youth activists, learn about specific parts of climate justice and climate change in both Africa and the US, and also learn about our experiences as Black youth climate activists. To give you guys a broad idea of what the agenda looks like, first for an hour, we will hear some prepared questions by me to the panelists. Then we will have a 20-minute time gap for the Q&A session with questions by you. And I will end off the session with some poetry that I prepared for you guys. Before we start, I just want to give a brief introduction to each of these amazing panelists that we have here today. Oludaso Adenike is an eco-feminist, climate justice activist, and a first-class graduate in agricultural economics. She's also an advocate for the restoration of Lake Chad and the founder of I Lead Climate, pioneering the Green Democracy Initiative and the Green Accord. Irina Sua is one of the team leads at Ecological Justice, a communities banner that seeks to connect struggles for ecological justice. Ecological Justice educates, organizes, and amplifies the individual and collective efforts of communities towards attaining food sovereignty, reclaiming green spaces, and transforming community spaces. Nkosi Naiti is a climate advocate from Victoria Falls. He is the vice president of the Environmental Club at Iñati High School. He became Climate Youth Ambassador for UNI CEF in 2015. He has been a climate activist since the age of 10, and he's the Green Line Africa Youth Ambassador since 2014. He had held sessions on local radio stations and newspapers. He has also held peer education sessions on climate change. He had a big role in the establishment of biogas plants at 2 schools. Yola Ungagwana is 13 years old. She goes to Yomalela Primary School. She has become a local climate activist and a member of Earthchild Project Equal Warriors. Her plea to the South African government is to take urgent action. She is also the youngest here, so I just want to give her props. All of these activists have done so much work, and I'm so honored to be here and learn more about them. So with that being said, let's hop into the panel for today. Before becoming a climate activist, I was and still am a social justice activist, particularly for racial justice. I have always been aware of the oppression towards Black people growing up in a Black family, and my mom always educating me on the history of my people and what can I do to make that better. In my community, Black people have always been targeted not only by police, but by our school systems, by the hospital systems, and also by employees at simple stores. I saw that my people were being dehumanized. And when I look at climate change, it's the same thing. Corporations putting their polluting buildings in communities of color for the profit of their own, depriving people of color from their ability of breathing clean air, which is a human right. And so when I look at climate justice and when I look at racial justice, I see that both of these things are really depriving people of color from the right of breathing clean air and just being treated like humans. And so this is what really pushed me to become a climate activist and also a social justice activist, and also to incorporate those two when I'm doing both of these works. Now that you know what pushed me to become a climate activist, I want to ask Nkosi and Asua, what inspired or pushed you to become a climate activist? And if there's a specific scene or story in your life, can you please tell us that story?
Hello, everyone. As already introduced, my name is Ngoslati Nyati. I'm a UNICEF with climate advocate in Victoria Falls, Zimbabwe. Okay, what pushed me into climate activism was the fact that what I was learning in class and what I was experiencing, these things were telling. I was seeing them in my own environment. You talk of drought, you talk of floods, you talk of heat waves. That was happening in my own environment. So I decided to speak out as a voice for the environment and actually educate others on the issue. So I'm raising awareness on a local radio station and at school every Friday is for the future. So every Friday I've got sessions, education sessions on climate change. And I also publish fortnight sessions, fortnight publications on climate change as well, just to educate others and my peers as well. So basically that's my work. That's how I was inspired. What I was learning in class, my teachers did a great job. What I was learning in class and what I was experiencing pushed me to become a climate activist where I am today. Thanks.
My name is Asua. What inspired me? I just realized what we consider normal is so boring. So at a young age, I didn't like wearing shoes. I wanted to feel the earth, and I loved when we were at my grandma's place. Like I would go for those walks in the bush, and I realized nature was so beautiful. But at that time, until I came to the university, that's when it dawned on me that from a very young age, we are alienated from nature. We are separated from it completely. And it's such an abstract thing in the school curriculum. So we don't get to prioritize how important it is to us and why we should protect it. So as I started to learn about the global processes and trying to connect it with the local processes and how it affects us, so that's when now the real ignition came. So I started participating in efforts to rehabilitate rivers, because rivers are doing so badly in Nairobi, where I came to school at the University of Nairobi. And I interacted with communities at what they call the urban poor, and how they interact with the environment, how the waste that they get down there is not their waste and it affects families. So that's what inspired me. And also interacting with organizations and being a volunteer, going into communities across the country and seeing firsthand how the climate crisis affects people. That's what inspired me to be part of this.
Definitely, I can totally relate to that. Seeing, how everyone's being affected by the climate crisis in different ways is what really, helped me have an open mind as an organizer to see what can I do to help these different groups of people. I feel like a lot of people have different views on what achieving climate justice looks like, but they all have, the same ending: climate change not being heard anymore in our world. But to me, achieving climate justice is also achieving social justice. Both of these injustices are fueled by white supremacy, colonialism, capitalism, patriarchy, and really all systems of oppression. And so to achieve climate justice is to dismantle these systems completely, because when looking at the climate crisis, we really have to, destroy the roots, and the roots are these oppressive systems to make sure that, you know, climate change won't reoccur and again. And so I want to ask Yola and Adenike, what does achieving climate justice look like to you on a local level, but also a global level?
Thank you for the question, Ania. I'm glad there has been a shift where the world is now starting to recognize climate justice. As a 13-year-old girl from South Africa, living in informal settlement and sharing a communal tap with more than 55 families. And also, I'm living the future that many people fear. In May 2017 was the lowest point our Western Cape dams have ever been. We had about 11% of drinkable water left. Even though our dams are filling up, I see the effects of drought. A month ago, we had no water for 2 weeks. For me, achieving climate justice locally is first when each household should have access to basic human rights resources. Example, water, clean energy, and enough water supply. Number two, locally. Local government should put in place rescue plan to protect our communities. Globally, the world needs to recognize climate change victims. Number two, our stories and voices need to be heard and recognized. We need to hold accountable the biggest contributors to climate change. We need policies and reinforcement human rights to protect the victims plus the environment. Thank you.
Yes, I totally agree with you on all your points. You know, part of achieving climate justice is to, you know, recognize that climate change is a real thing in all parts of the world and it's affecting people differently. And some people are impacted more and some people are impacted less. But just recognizing that it's real and that, you know, we can see it today is so important and is one of the first steps to achieve climate justice. I'm 14, so I'm usually the youngest person in the room, but not today. You know, as a youth activist and as a 14-year-old Black girl growing up in Oakland, California, and as an organizer and an activist, it has been an experience for me. You know, sometimes with all these identities, it can, you know, push me down because sometimes, you know, I tend to be silenced, but it's also a reason for me to keep thriving and keep going because, you know, there's other people that want to do this and I have to sort of be a role model for them to show that, you know, I can't give up. So, you know, you can't give up. 'Cause at the end of the day, it's all of our futures that are getting affected and we just can't do this with one person. We have to do it with a lot of people.
Thank you so much. Climate justice, it means a lot to me and to everyone around the world because it means it's a justice for a livable future for the people. It's a justice whereby we can attain equality, equity, and also our global goals. And it also means engaging the leaders at the top and most importantly at the grassroots level, because we know that those people at the grassroots are usually the ones being left behind in all of these benefits, and unconsciously they do activities that affect our planet or leads to increase in emissions. But once they get informed, they are ready to change their pathways. So we need to influence the political will and the people's will. So activism or climate justice means getting the people's will and the political will. The people's will means the people at the grassroots. The political will means our leaders at various levels, because we know that once we strike a balance in both sides, then we know we can have the justice we deserve, and there will be no form of denialism in any form, because people are really not believing that climate change exists because our leaders are not really putting pressure. The action of the future generation will not be anybody. So climate justice to me means giving liberty to millions of people that are in poverty or in crisis right now, and to prevent more people from being into the climate crisis. So it's a justice for all. without leaving anyone behind.
I was just saying I'm usually the youngest in the room, and my experience as a climate activist with that, and sometimes that can be draining and constantly thinking, well, can I do this? Can I do that? But also remembering that I have to be role models for other youth like me, and to make sure that I'm uplifting the voices of Black and Brown communities. And so I wanted to ask our two youngest activists, Yola and Nkosi, how has been your experience as a youth activist, and what challenges have you faced? How have you overcome them, and what has helped you overcome those challenges?
Okay, thank you for the question again. My experience as a young climate activist was unbelievable, especially having a cool and an understanding teacher, Miss Toli, my mentor. As a 3 years ago, I had no clue about climate change. And when I joined the Earthchild project, I remember one day when our topic was about climate change, I was curious and wanted to know more. And I remember when I learned more about the topic, I was blown away because the hardships that I faced every day links directly to climate justice. When I and I've led marches with more than 2,000 children outside Parliament, and I've been a keynote speaker in government conferences. I've sat in panels with presidents, but my biggest achievement was when I started my own environmental group in my community. Also, the challenges that I face is not everyone sees the good work that I do, and I have heard many people saying the baddest things to break my heart. And also being young, sometimes the others don't take you seriously. And also our government is still in denial about the whole thing. And there's a lack of resources to support my work, especially educating the young children. And I overcome these challenges by telling myself that I'm young, brave, beautiful, and I can do this, and there's no one that can stop me to do what I do. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Nkosi. Thank you. I believe everything you said, and I just want to give you your props because when I look at like people that are younger than me doing this, it's just so amazing because it does take a lot of time and a lot of thought to do the work that we do at such a young age. And so I just want to thank Yola and Nkosi and all of the rest of the youth activists for doing the work they do. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I must say that for every journey, there's some drawbacks or there's some problems which everyone must face because it's a journey. However, since when I was 10 doing climate activism, not everyone was listening to whatever I was saying. Bearing in mind the fact that I was young at the age of 10, so I kept on dedicated to my work. That's how I overcame. Then one of my biggest achievements was the construction of the first biogas plant in my hometown. So everyone is actually seeing the usage of clean energy right now. So even it's an aid for teaching, like teachers can come and teach their children in a place, in something which they can see as well. So that has been my biggest opportunity or my biggest achievement, as well as speaking and at the High Level Political Forum at the COP last year. I'd long wished for that because all along I was doing my activism in my community. So I wanted a bigger stage, a bigger audience where everyone could see and everyone could hear. So that was one of my biggest achievements. Well, as I said earlier on, every journey has got its disadvantages and its problems as well. So one of the problems I faced was the fact that you could tell people that let's stop deforestation, but is there a substitution for that? Okay, so you tell them about energy saving lamps, sometimes it's expensive. So funding has been one of the problems in as far as activism is concerned, because you can't fund the people whom you are telling to stop. I'm talking about anthropogenic activities like which contribute to the changing climate, cutting down firewood. You tell them, guys, let's use renewable energy. But sometimes some people cannot afford that. So that's how my activism has been. But the key is dedication, because the fight is in us and we are the fight. That's why we're fighting for what we want and the future we deserve.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I can see snaps from the audience. Yeah, my experience as a youth activist has been so similar to your guys's, and I definitely can relate to you. I didn't learn about climate change until I was about 10 or 11 in the sixth grade. But when I learned about it, it was really downplayed. My teachers made it seem like we just had to stop using plastic products and everything would be perfect again. But it's really, a bigger scale than that. We have to really change a lot of aspects of our everyday life. And so as I got older, I started to learn more about it. And I started to want to take more action about it. Like, why isn't people doing something about this? Why isn't action being taken? And so, with this being said, I want to ask Asua and Adenike, what are ways teachers can educate their students about climate change and the movement? Because I feel like teachers have a huge role in helping students become climate activists because they are the ones that are educating them about it. And so if students know about it, they want to, learn more about it and take action upon it. And so basically, what are ways teachers can get their students involved and teach them about climate change and the whole movement?
Um, Thank you. Um, yeah, I agree. Teachers would play a very critical role in making students be actively part of this. But in my context, the teachers are not in a position to do that well. If they were, it would have been a plus. So for them to be able to do that, it means there has to be curriculum changes, for instance, a very critical bit of it. And that change has to include everyone, the teachers, the students, I mean, every critical stakeholder in the education sector, so that um, it is an inclusive thing and a very elaborate, um, how do I put it, like something that everybody had a say in and how it's going to be done. Because again, you can't teach ecological stuff formally the way the other things are taught in class, because it needs a lot of practicability. It also needs a lot of things that have to be simplified, for the students, especially in our case in secondary and primary school, to get to understand what they really are. So because what we have now are jargons, very hard words that even communities cannot really get to grasp. And then there's that gap between what we call indigenous knowledge and what uh, people who have gone to school may call modern science, in quotes. But all these are saying the same thing. So there has to be that convergent point where we draw from this rich knowledge that communities have, and also this knowledge that the so-called modern science is coming with, so that everybody is able to meaningfully engage and to come up with something that can be passed down to the other generation. Yeah.
Yeah, there are different ways that teachers can get their pupils, students involved. It could be using your surrounding situation as an instructional material to further buttress your points on climate change crisis. It might not be something artificial. I think using something feasible we helps synchronize what we are really emphasizing on, and that is what I use it in my instructional aid when I go to communities, schools. I try to look at around their environment. Do they have enough trees? If they do, how are they keeping it? How are they maintaining it? Do they cut down their trees in their environment? How many trees do they have in their houses? How do they keep it well? What is their reaction when they see people cut down trees? What do they mean by what does the benefit of tree have for us? Because we know that trees really absorb carbon dioxide that would have been left hanging at the atmosphere, leading to global warming. So it absorbs it. So we really need to look at our surrounding situation to teach the people. Through that, they understand more, and it helps them create change and drive for sustainable solutions. Because recently there was a flood that happened in my area where I live. So I use such scenario or situation to tell people that this is the impact of climate change crisis. It's not something that is superstitious belief. It is something that have never happened before in the area where I've been living for the past 15 years. So when it happened, it became dawned on me that this is really the impact of climate change crisis. Because when I came to that area, I was very much young, but I know well about where we live. So I saw that the river was narrow, but now it's now broad because of the yearly floods, and it expanded the channel. So it's really intruding into people's houses, destroying their properties, leading to loss and damages, sweeping away their farmlands, and people as a result get caught off in the flood and lost their life. So I'm just looking at it that in the next few decades to come, maybe a decade, my house might be might be submerged with water, because that is what I'm looking at, because the river channel keeps expanding every year, and we don't know which houses will be the next to come. So we just use our surrounding situation to engage the students, to explain to them, for them to understand. Because if we are using something else from another country, they might not get to understand what is happening within their country. They might not get to relate to their friends about it. But when we tell them that, look, this hot weather that we're seeing is as a result of the emissions that is rising, you not trekking, always trying to enter a bike, a bus, like that. So we try to explain to them. So when that situation comes, they get to relate with you. They get to understand that, yes, you are making a point and you are correct. So you'll be able to gain their trust and able to do what you expect them to do.
I really didn't have a mentor before I became an activist. There wasn't like a teacher or a person I just talked to about organizing, so I kind of just jumped straight into it. I'm with Youth versus Apocalypse, YVA for short. YVA is a Bay Area-based group full of frontline youth fighting for climate justice while also uplifting the voices of Black and Brown communities. And so when I first joined YVA, they were organizing a 20,000 to 40,000 strike. Like, I had joined like a week before. And so it was really crazy to see all the last minute organizing and just everything that was going on. I've been part of YVA for a year now, so I've kind of gotten used to organizing, got the gist of it. But yeah, I really didn't have someone to help me, say, oh, this is too much, you can't do this. Oh, you're taking on too much, take time for yourself. And so, I want to make sure that youth and other students are getting that advice. And so since we have 4 amazing activists right here, I want to ask Nkosi and Adenike, what advice would you give to youth who want to get involved in the climate justice movement, and where should they start?
Okay. Well, I must say that the fight for climate justice is not easy, but it requires dedication. The People Party, Mother Earth there's got many enemies, but the worst enemy is the human being. But we're all benefiting out of it. Well, I must say that we are all supposed to join the fight for climate justice, but especially the youths, we are supposed to be on the front line fighting for climate justice. It doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter how you can start. You can study on your WhatsApp status. It's just dedication is what is needed to start. Just any platform is just okay to start. Because if I remember where I started, it wasn't on the phone, it wasn't on the media, it was just me and my classes. So that's how I started. So for dedication, being dedicated to your work, start wherever you are in your environment, because you yourself, you are the change.
Yeah, they can start from anywhere. Anybody that wants to get involved can start from anywhere. No beginning is too little. Just start to make your own impact, and from there you get to see that you're already being heard around the world, because there's no voice that is too little enough to change the world. We all have our voice, so we should make use of it. We shouldn't allow anybody to suppress it. So how you can do it is just, you can start going, just localize your action. What the action that works in Nigeria might not work in Uganda or in US, in UK or other countries. Just understand the way your country works. Like for us in Nigeria, we can't hold a massive rally as we do see in Western countries because we know that there are so many security factors, risk factors that are here. So we try to protect the people, the environment to make it safe enough for everyone that is coming in and going out because we don't want to create, in the bit of us trying to solve issue, that we don't want to create more crisis. So we try to make the place to be protected because even organizing a massive rally is money intensive, and we what we do is that we use our personal funds because there are not yet any funding coming from external supports. So we try to use our funds to get all our actions being done. So it doesn't really matter that you really get the funding, international funding coming yet or external funding. Just start from somewhere. From there, someone can get interested in what you do and get to buy in, and from there you get grants. And yes, it scales through because the movement for climate justice, it gets bigger when we are empowered to do more. If we aren't empowered, it might just be limited with our ideas, our actions, and what we needed to do. So we really want us to just start from somewhere and get being bold, focused, and your relationship with people also matters because it determines if you are going to make your demand a reality. It needs mentorship, it needs someone to speak to you, to keep you going and not to relent. Because I must say that activism is not something that is easy. It can be frustrating sometimes. It can be draining because you need to read a lot. As I read a lot before I get to talk anything or say anything about any particular topic. I have to read more to know more. So it needs you to be brilliant enough, um, to be smart at what you do because it can be draining sometimes. Like you might think your actions are not counting, but it does. Many people are watching out there. They want to see what you do. They want to see if you continue. And consistency is the key. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you guys. Some advice I would give is just to, educate yourself. I feel like, knowledge is power. That's something I always say because the more you know, the more you are able to share that information with others, but also make sure that, you're knowing what you're speaking about and you can understand the different kind of parts from what that issue is, because I feel like climate change is targeting so many different things and impacting so many different things, and so just educating yourself on those issues is like really important and can also help a lot as a climate youth activist. As an activist and organizers, we are always talking about heavy topics that can be very draining. We're always talking about, the worst scenarios if we don't take action because we really want people to do it. And that just comes with, the role of being an activist and an organizer. We are already starting to see some of the scary impacts of climate change going into this new decade. And, a lot of people have been feeling like they're kind of losing hope for the future. And sometimes that can be true for myself, but, we have to keep hope alive because it's the thing that is fueling the climate justice movement and the social justice movement. And so, we've been talking about some heavy things during the panel. So I wanted to end the panel before the Q&A starts on a positive note. And so I want to ask Asua and Yola, what gives you hope for the future?
Thank you for the question again. What gives me hope is that there are young children like me who are willing to make change. And there are people who are willing to listen to the emergency and listen to us as youth, instead of turning their blind eye on the crisis. And this crisis is dangerous, and that is why we should address it and spread awareness. And we as youth, we have been saying we want change now, but seen anything. We have said it's time to act, but many people have not acted. But it's never too late to act, even though we get affected by climate change every day. Thank you.
Um, What gives me hope? This panel here gives me hope. I mean, at 24, I feel the oldest. So, and there are younger people in the panel in their teenage, some adolescents doing great work. And the other thing that gives me hope is how um, the climate justice movement across the globe at this time of the pandemic has been very vibrant um, in singling out the nexus between the pandemic and climate justice, and how this global pandemic has exposed some of the ills the highly capitalistic global system we are in has subjected people to. So it has exposed a lot of things. And in my country, it has exposed a lot of things on the ecological side. I mean, we have seen just how health and climate justice are linked when it comes to access to food at this time, access to energy, access to water, at a time when we are telling people to maintain hygiene, access to very basic things. So that gives me hope. And just how the more vibrant younger people are coming up in the space is a good thing. Yeah. And because we have a university hosting such a session, that is also a very good sign.
Yeah, seeing other youth activists really take action, to continue to take action is what really gives me hope to, keep doing what I'm doing constantly to make sure that I'm helping myself, but also future generations to come after us to make sure that they won't have to do the work that we are doing. Before we start the Q&A discussion, I just wanted to ask any of the panelists, is there anything else you wanted to add or say really about anything about your work or just about climate activism, your experience? Okay, great. So now we're going into the Q&A discussion. I was wondering from the audience, are there any questions that you have for these amazing panelists? And if you have a question for a specific panelist, please make sure to state their name in the question. Feel free to put the question in the chat directly to me or just open to everyone to see. Okay, we have a question. I don't think this is really directed to anyone, but anyone can feel free to jump in here. But what do you view the role of teachers to be in this work?
So teachers spend a lot of time with young people. I mean, across the continent. I don't know about the other place. People at their very active age, from their adolescence to being young adults, um, all of that period, people spend half to 3/4 of that in school. So that means they spend more time with teachers. So that puts teachers at a very pivotal role in modeling upcoming climate warriors. And it also puts teachers at a place where, I mean, students can interact in this issue formally and informally, like in and outside class. So we could have, because it is not formally in the curriculum yet, so there is that space for teachers to craft and come up with other activities in the school to complement the little that is in the curriculum right now, and also part of what we call the co-curricular activities out of class, the drama, the music festival, if they can also have aspects of environmental stuff. So that's something that teachers can take up. And also just have students do projects and initiatives within the school as well, so that we are able to see schools as models for climate justice.
Thank you for that impact. Before we move on to the next question, did anyone else want to add? Okay. Another question we had is, do you guys get opportunities to meet activists from other countries very often? I can jump in here to help others come up. I feel like very rare, just because of the time differences. And, you know, in the US, we recently had a presidential election, so there was really a lot of organizing around that. So we lately just been having a lot of panels, you know, nationally, but it would be great to have really more panels internationally, because I feel like, you know, climate change is affecting all countries in different ways, and it's important to know how that's affecting, and also, you know, learning about each other's government systems and ways that, you know, we are alike and ways that we are different, so we can really have a sense of unity between us. Because even though we might live in different countries and, you know, experience different things, they're all rooted at climate change, and, you know, the whole earth is being affected by climate change. Just making sure that we're having that sense of unity is really important, and that can happen with panels like these. We can move on to the next question. um, this is for everyone here. What are the ages of the group of individuals that you organize with?
I work with there is a young the young climate change activists that I work with. They are 13 years old, and also there is a one that is 12 years old. And the children that I teach are like, they are from grade R to grade ones. Yeah, they are 9 to 6 years old, 6 to 9 years old.
Thank you. I work with people, you know, in YVA from, I'm the youngest in YVA, so, but we do have a fellowship, but in like kind of the board of YVA, the youngest is 14 and the oldest is 19. But the youngest I've ever worked with was with Abundant Beginnings group in the Bay Area. They're like 3, 4, 1. So yeah. I'll go on to the next question if anyone does not want to add anything. Do you talk to other students about your activism and how they can start now?
Yes, I always deliver that to my speeches.
Okay. Yes, so at the university, I share some of the activities with classmates and people from other associations in school, to invite them to join. So most of the time, it's really difficult to get how do I put it? To get like fully committed people like to continue. So most of the time people come one and off. But of course you get a few who join organizations and continue with the work or start their initiatives afterwards. Yeah.
We have another question. This question can be really answered in the chat, but just in case any of the panelists didn't catch it. Are any of you available to do Zoom meetings with our classes? I teach 5th grade. I would love for you to meet and speak to them, even for just an hour or less would be so powerful. You can chat Iris Patterson for that. I just wanted to make sure the panelists got that message, just in case it got lost in the chat. We have a question for Adenike and anyone else who has experience with this, but what type of pushback have you seen from farmers or others in your area when discussing climate change?
There's not really a pushback. They also believe that their action is wrong because they use firewood. They don't have the money to afford renewable sources of energy, and that is why when we are talking about climate actions, we expect that developed country or Western countries should be able to assist developing country for transition. Because right now we should be thinking of how we can train people in developing country to know um, how to produce renewable sources of energy and other forms of energy. Because right now we want people to switch to renewable sources of energy, but yet it is not affordable compared to the fossil fuel. Fossil fuel is subsidized. It's affordable. It's anywhere you can get it, compared to renewable sources of energy that cost you more. So everybody can't afford renewable sources of energy. If we want climate action, then we should bring down or make affordable renewable sources of energy below the fossil fuel. Then naturally, people is going to switch up from fossil fuel because people knows that fossil fuel really destroys the health of the people and destroy our planet. But the best alternative is not affordable enough. So these are things that the Western countries should look into. And when we are demanding for climate, these are all our appeal that the renewable sources of energy that people are producing today is not affordable enough. So where does the climate action comes in? How do we get the afford? How do we afford it? These are complaints that I get to receive from the farmers, from those at the grassroots level, that they can't afford these things. And that is the reality of many people, of us like this, that these things are not being cannot be gotten at a cheaper price. So I think they are ready to change their action because they are conscious about what is happening. They could tell you that truly they have trees on their way to farms, but now it's just scanty trees. And before they used to burn down their bush, but now they don't burn down because they know the implication that fire is going to affect their soil and fertility and productivity.
Thank you. And if anyone had input for that, feel free to share it with us. If not, I'll move on to the next question from the audience. Are there certain supports that you wish you had throughout your educational and activist journeys, or what was the greatest support that you had access to? This is open to anyone, so feel free to jump in. Okay, I'll keep it short here. Basically, I really have never had like a mentor or a teacher that has really helped guide me, but my family is very supportive. One of my best friends, she's also a climate activist and social justice activist. We've been friends since like the second grade. We've always kind of had that same mind on current issues in the world. But there was a point where I really kind of wanted to stop organizing and being an activist because it was really tiring and just draining, and I felt like nothing was like happening or nothing was changing. But she really helped me keep going, and she kind of forced me to, but I needed the force and the push. But yeah, she's like the main reason why I continue to be an activist and an organizer. And you know, her brother was a victim of police brutality, is what really inspired me to become a social justice activist, particularly racial justice activist. And so from that point on, I just always promised myself that, you know, I would push myself to do that for him because we were all so close, and, you know, do it for other people that were being killed by climate justice, but also by our government. I'll pass it off to Asua.
Yeah, so on the bit of having mentors, I also wished there was some kind of intergenerational relationship so that you are able to learn across ages, because there's a lot of ageism as well in this space. So if you are young, and if you are a woman, so people don't take you seriously, and some people think you don't know what you're saying or something, or you don't get it. Some think you are dumb or something. So that happens. And like I said before, the information that is available on climate change has a lot of jargons. It's very difficult to disseminate as it is. So there is a lot of work to be done in simplifying that information so that people are able to relate with it, and so that it is consumable And the other very big barrier is people still don't see the climate crisis as an emergency yet. And like I said before, people see nature as an abstract thing. So people have not yet internalized what danger it puts us into if the ecosystem is badly tampered with. So that requires a lot of work. I think that would work for young children because the old ones are long gone. The alienation is so far apart. So to get them back will be a little bit difficult. So I think a support system that would help reach the younger ones so that they're able to understand from that age. So that would be very, very important.
Okay. For me, I have a mentor. Earth Child Project is mentoring me, but for the outside work that I'm doing as my eco club, we really need help for things like stationery, and also the information about climate change is basically on English and it's not on our languages, and also that is also a yeah.
Yeah, I think environmental education should be studied at an early age, just to add on, at an early age, so that we can all grow up appreciating the fact that the climate is changing and we have to mitigate. Then just to add on printing some stuff, it mustn't only be in English, but it must be in our local languages. And the information must actually reach even the remotest areas so that everyone can actually appreciate and actually learn from the context and act.
Yeah, I totally agree with Yola. I feel like a big reason why so many people are not educated about climate change is because it's not accessible to them when it comes to, language usage. YVA tries our best to, have as many languages accessible to everyone in our country, whether that's in Spanish or English or having an ASL interpreter. But we want to make sure that everyone is being educated and can understand because, we can't do this in groups. We have to really do it all together.
The greatest support that I have access to is when I got this when I became a Nigerian delegate to COP25. That was at Spain in Madrid. I was just on my own. Then the minister reached out to me, the Minister of State for Environment, Sharon, in Nigeria. She reached out to me that, okay, I want you to be part of this Nigerian delegates that will be going for Spain. That was my first time going, and it was really an eye opener. And I was able, when I was leaving Nigeria, I never had it on the mind or thought that I'm going to take part in any activities nor speak. But when getting there, I got this. I was appointed to, okay, so you will speak for Africa. I did, and it became the whole talk of the event, and then also take part in other speaking engagements. I never planned all of these things while leaving Nigeria for Spain, but it became a reality. And also I was celebrated as one of the 12 women taking action in local community by the Human Impact institution in USA. So these are things that really got me connected, meeting so many people, getting connected to them, and up to now they get connected to me, keeping in touch with me, and it really opened several opportunities for me in such gatherings. So these are things that I have also seen in the movement, and every other opportunities are also coming because of recently I've been nominated for the prize for activism. Come next this week, they are going to make the announcement who win that prize. So it's many of those opportunities I receive. But one of the main issues that we're really struggling with is the funding aspect, because without funding, we really can't go the length we are aiming forward to and every other thing. So we really want or need that funding so that we can easily participate in doing every other activities.
Thank you for that input. We have another question from the chat. How do you see upholding women's rights and indigenous rights as a way to fight climate change?
I think women's rights and indigenous rights, equity, and all, they are all the same fight because climate change and gender inequality, they are twin fights. Because when we have justice for one, we have justice for the other. The indigenous people knowledge too cannot be erased in the movement for climate action because they have the idea, they have the first idea towards solving the climate change crisis. So we can't keep them at the back stage. We need to go with them. We need to flow with them. We need to see how we can bring back the earth with all of these actions needed. So I think the justice that we are looking for, everybody is just being unique with their own action. As we are fighting, we are also fighting for all of these things because climate justice is also same as gender justice, and it's going to help to improve indigenous knowledge. So we are all fighting for one thing, that we have a just world, and through that just world we'll strike equality in every other injustices that we are fighting against, because one justice can influence justice in the system for the rest.
Um, so in across the continent right now, and in my country, indigenous people and majorly women feed the country. So the indigenous people are the small scale farmers. The women are the small scale farmers as well, and make a huge chunk of the workers at the industrial farms with the cash crops. So it's their labor that feeds the country. So it's their rights are important. Again, mostly it's the women who make sure the children and everybody in the house is well fed and well kept. So that means the labor of ensuring people have basic utilities that I mentioned, water, food, and everything, is highly dependent on the women. So when there is little or no access to water, it's the women who have to walk long distances or climb flights of stairs to go and find water. If there's no food, it's still on them. They're the ones who have to go out of the way to get food for the people. And indigenous people are entitled to, protecting heritage, just like everybody else is holding their native heritage dear. So it's also important that most of these sites, the ones that are still there, that are facing threats, are able to be protected. So putting them as part of the UNESCO is not enough. So what after putting them there, if there is no action towards actually protecting them, it doesn't matter even if they are listed as part of the UNESCO. So those are very important groups. And again, there is very rich indigenous knowledge on climate justice that also needs to be protected and disseminated as well.
Yes, thank you so much for the input. Does anyone else want to add to that? Yeah, we have another question. To anyone who wants to address this, do you feel that there are racist misrepresentations in the portrayal of climate change activism centered around Greta Thunberg as opposed to youth in Africa? And feel free to jump in anytime.
I think that was already answered, but just to give a little bit on the rest factor. So it's a very big issue this side, especially in the conservation sector, and particularly the wildlife bit as well. So there's a lot of conflict between communities that have been with this wildlife for the longest time, And then we have these conservation liars who have very big ranches in the name of conserving environment and conserving endangered species. And these ranches were community land. So basically, they are land grabbers who have put up ranches and are claiming to be conservationists. And what's sad is that the more conservation ranches we have in Kenya, the more our species are endangered because very many rare species have died in those conservancies. So you wonder, okay, how did an animal die in a conservancy? I mean, they are under radar more than they are outside in the wild, and they still die in these conservancies. There have been very outrageous things like parks being fenced and stuff like that. Yet communities have been with these animals for life, and they haven't had any issues. These issues of wildlife human conflict just came when people started building estates in the parks and around the park where people are not supposed to like put up such structures. So there's a lot of that going on, and spaces in our own parks in our country being exclusively for other people and not us. So it's exclusively for foreigners. So we are not allowed to go into some of these hotels, yet they are in our country. And also when conservation issues are being floated out, the communities that have been doing the actual work do not get the frontline. They do not get that attention. So most of the time, it's the white people who have been here, who have grabbed land and put up conservancies, who get that media attention, yet our species die in those conservancies. So it's a very sad thing. Thank you.
I think one thing in the youth in Africa we need is the fact that we aren't getting the spotlight that we need. And yet we have the crisis, the climate change crisis that is appropriately affecting us. I think the media should be fair enough to be able to intercept climate change reporting or spotlighting. The interception have to be there. If the interception is not there, it becomes a racism. So we all have to know that if there is no justice for us here, then there's no justice for the world. So we shouldn't deceive ourselves when it comes to climate justice. Maybe it belongs to one aspect of the world. It all belongs to the world. We need justice in the Asian continent, in the Western continent, in African continent. So the media shouldn't be sentimental or racist in their reporting. I know that Greta Thunberg is brave, is fearless. She has been able to raise thousands or millions of people to become conscious about the environment. That is kudos. But we also need a spotlight too in Africa, because we have many youths that are ready, that are doing more for the environment. In fact, we don't even get the funding that are needed. When we want to do many things, we don't get the funding. Sometimes that is what brings up the frustration, because you really want to do this, that you think this idea is going to work if I could do it. But what about the funding? It's not there. The whole world is sometimes looking towards the Western world, but the African world, they don't feel that sometimes you should deal with it. But no, it doesn't work that way, because crisis in any country, it's a crisis for all the world at large. So we also need to deal with it, that we have the media and every other bodies have to be interceptional in reporting, spotlighting, and every other thing. Since last year, I've started this campaign of the Lake Chad region, the Act on Lake Chad region, because I find out that in my 200 level during my undergraduate, we had this farmer herdsmen crisis that was arising from the Lake Chad region in the northeastern part of the country. And this is really something that has shrunk by 90% the lake. And it's affecting like 4 countries that borders it and every other countries that are linked to each other. So this is what I've been advocating for, the restoration and all. But the media is not really taking it up as it should be. Because by now I believe that our leaders, especially in Africa, they really want that spotlight to be at the world, to go around the world, then they can now take the actions that are needed for them to do. I think sometimes they need that thing for them to be propelled to do the needful, and for the world not to see that they are deviating from the action that are needed.
Yes, thank you for that. Did anyone else want to add anything before we move on to the last question, I think? Okay, great. Have you guys connected with classrooms outside of your own community or country for climate change based units of study?
I think to answer that, so that's one of the reasons why I am trying to put together ecological justice. It's not a very old thing. It just picked up this year after a whole year of speaking to myself in 2019 because people didn't want to buy it. So I have been part of volunteers and part-time worker for NGOs for a few times, and I just didn't like that structure of doing things because information doesn't trickle down to the communities who need it the most to be able to protect themselves. So what we do is we have ecological classes every 2 weeks. So we have monthly activities and ecological classes. So for now, the only resource I have is myself with the knowledge I got from working with the organizations and also other students who have done environmental studies and such, and people in the community themselves who have very rare indigenous knowledge on ecological farming, ecological conservation, and the likes. But I have also had a chance to interact virtually at this time with other people across the continent who are doing stuff and beyond. So in virtual classes. And the other thing that we also do at this time is to get to screen some of these virtual classes, of course, with the help of an interpreter. So I also do interpret sometimes, interpret, one of those or both. So from English to Swahili, so that the people can be able to understand. So when I get articles, I have to translate them to Swahili and pass them to people who may not understand English. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for all of your work. I think that was the last question. Yeah, if anyone doesn't have any questions, I just want to thank all the panelists for being here today and, having their voices being heard and, really using this space and platform. And I hope that the audience really got to learn more about the panelists and their experiences as youth activists, but also, the struggles and hardships they face in their countries. And yes, and I was so honored to be here and be a part of this amazing panel. And thank you, Elsa, for help organizing this and having me here today. Before I hand it off to Elsa, I have a poem that I wanted to end us off with. YVA recently dropped our national campaign, This is the Time, which is centered around the election, but also a call to action for youth to really organize within their communities and, have adults, recognize climate change as a threat to really our futures and having as a jeopardy. And so, yeah, I wanted to read this poem. It's titled This is the Time. I hope you guys enjoy it. This is the time to take the broken pieces from the crumbling foundations, mold them. I'm impatient. The time to recognize these failing systems so deeply despised, mold them into what we need them to be, to a world that is just and free. Our leaders do not see that we are on our knees begging for air, so we can just breathe. Sit, think, our world being destroyed, hands of people destroying, we are the destroyers. I'm impatient, molding, building a world people deserve to see. Time disappearing like people's hope across the globe, people dying because of our leaders' choices. Is this what we are proud to be? This is the time to change things. Damaging, enough damage has been done. It is our turn to show you how we like things run. I am impatient. I know this is the time to say goodbye to the oppressive systems keeping us silent, now saying hi to the movement of survivement. Oceans rising like my anxiety, increasing heat, increasing my thoughts. I cannot think. Is this really a world you want us to live in? You say I'm so inspirational, sit in a seat of power and still create no change. I don't just want to be inspirational. I want you to do what we demand. Crumbling, molding, the truth that we need to know, systems that will help us grow. I am impatient. I want to live in a nation where my leaders actually lead. They say our lungs are being filled with the last breath from burning trees, drowning in ashes, more flames than people. If we don't do something now, soon the ratio between living things in the air will be unequal. The people's blood flooding through the streets, gunshots and screams on repeat. The systems our country rely on aren't concrete. War between governments that the people are hidden from. What are we trying to become? We mistake weapons as our protection. We are still unshielded, the real and concealed, but today it will be revealed, the climate crisis. Making the earth's clock tick faster, people with power fulfilled with laughter, but I'm not laughing. We're not laughing. We're not protected. Fossil fuels cutting down trees, these are the weapons. The probability of our future is less to happen. Every day we sit back and do nothing to solve this climate crisis. We are tired of watching you sit back. You have the power to literally save our lives, but yet you sit there and say our facts are lies. I am impatient. This is the time to make these ugly systems ancient. This is the time, taking the broken pieces, putting them back together with the tape of passion. This is the time to take action. Thank you. I hope you guys enjoyed that piece. Like I said, I just want to thank all the panelists again for being here today and sharing their input. It was an honor to sit here and have a conversation with you guys, and I hope you guys all doing good. I just want to pass it off to Elsa and make sure she doesn't have anything to say before we end it off.
Thank you all, everybody, for this amazing panel. I am so moved by everything you shared.